Okay, thanks, Camille. Welcome, everyone. It is 5:30 on September 28th, 2021. This is the LTD Strategic Planning Committee. Thank you so much for being here, and I'm officially calling this meeting to order. First thing I'm going to do is roll call. So I am going to read all the names off, even though everyone's not here. So if you're here, just hand raise, present, here, yo, I'm excited to be here, whatever you want to say, I'm good with. So let's start with, I'm just gonna go down the list. Marianne Nolte, Franny Brindle, Mike Eister.
Here.
Thank you, Mike. Amy Cubbage.
Here.
Thank you, Amy. Susan Cox.
Here.
Thank you, Susan. Greg Evans. Jerry Gatos. Counselor, correct me how you say it, Stower?
I pronounce it Stair.
Stair. I'm so sorry about that. Counselor Stair.
In the house.
Leah Rush. Alma Jesus.
Here.
Thank you, Alma. Pete Knox.
It was here.
I see his name.
Oh, there he is.
So we will.
Yeah, sorry, I'm here. It's like technical problems.
Okay, he is here. Philip Shimhu. Am I saying that right?
Yeah, I'm here.
Awesome. Thanks, Philip. And Franny Brindle.
Here.
Thanks, Franny. Great. Thanks so much for being here, everyone. Welcome, and I'm excited to have everyone here for this great agenda. So really quick, remarks from the chair. My only remark is this is my first SPC meeting that I'm leading. So please, if there's any feedback, let me know, whether it's after the meeting, shoot me an email or private message. Oh, I guess we don't have chat on here. So email is going to be the best way, but I'm really open to feedback if something needs to be run differently, discussed in a different way. If you felt like something with the discussion needed to be modified, whatever that is, happy to hear it. As we go along with this, also, please feel free to help where needed also. This is a great group of folks, and I always appreciate everybody's insights, and however you want to make this a better conversation. So thanks for the trust in me. One of the reasons that we decided to have a board member fill one of the chair positions was to be that true liaison between the committee and the board of directors. And so this was a shift that was intentionally done so that these topics in the communication and everything had more robust conversation with the full board of directors. And everything we're doing in this committee should really be relevant to the work of the board of directors, right? So this really helped keep things on track. All right, let's just hop over to next agenda item. I do not have any additions to the agenda, but does anyone in this group have any announcements they want to make? Okay.
I just want to say, Caitlin, and I don't know if staff can help with this. It looks like Marianne is here, but she's not in the meeting as a panelist. She's here as an attendee. So she might be
perfect. Thank you for noticing that, Amy. Camille, if you want to pull her over. And on that note, also in our attendees is Emily Secord, and I want to say thank you to her for serving on the Strategic Planning Committee for the last few years. As we got new board members on, we shuffled our board members to different committees, but a round of applause and a big thank you to Emily Secord for the time that you spent every month with this committee. So yes, thank you, Emily. Perfect, thanks, Amy. Any other announcements? And welcome, Marianne. Can you do your obligatory here?
I'm here. Thank you, Amy and Camille, for pulling me over.
Perfect. Thanks, Marianne. Nice to see you. Okay, great. I'm going to turn it over to Camille for audience participation.
Thank you, Caitlin. I am not actually seeing anyone in the audience indicating that they would like to provide testimony. We have staff and other board members. So I will hand it back to you, Caitlin.
Okay, thanks. I'm so sorry, everyone. One thing I did forget to mention, there will be a doodle poll sent out. Now that we move the meetings to quarterly, the next meeting would actually fall on December 28th. I'm sure a lot of us probably have plans around that time. So the doodle poll will be sent out by Camille, and that will ask if you'd rather reschedule for the 7th or the 14th. So when you see that, please just make sure to mark which one of those work better, or if they both work, then mark them both. Okay. So let's hop right into our first agenda item, which actually is a vice chair election. So I just want to remind everyone that this is a 1-year term, and this position is working with the chair, who currently is me. Moving forward, it would be a board member. In the vice chair position, we have agenda setting meetings. So really great opportunity to get a little bit more involved and help set agendas and interface with staff. Also, in the absence of the chair, the vice chair does run the meetings. And reminder, we did move this to quarterly, so it's a little bit less of a time commitment, thank goodness. But you know, still a really impactful way that you can be part of LTD. So with that, I'd love to hear if there's any nominations for vice chair.
I'd like to nominate Mary Ann.
Thank you, Mike. Any other nominations? Mary Ann, do you want to accept that nomination? Is that a role you're interested in?
I have been the vice chair for the last year, so I think it's something that I will let somebody else enjoy.
Okay.
I'd like to nominate Alma.
Alma, can you share with us your thoughts if that's something you're interested in?
I would love to be able to chat a little bit more with Mary Ann, just to make sure that I'm the right person for the position and that it would be a good fit. So is it possible to chat a little bit about that offline? Or Mary Ann, if you have any suggestions about like the time commitment, just a little brief like thoughts about.
Feel free to discuss that right now.
Yeah, so I think you'd be wonderful, Alma. The time commitment, like Caitlin was saying, it's these meetings, and then the agenda setting meeting takes about an hour usually. And sometimes there's some back and forth with staff just to make sure that we're kind of all on the same page and understanding what's next. So it isn't a huge time commitment. Yeah, and I think having your input and feedback would be awesome if you're willing to do it. But if you've got other things going, I totally get that.
I think the fact that we moved to quarterly, and if there's no one else that is available, I mean, you know, within reason, I'm absolutely happy to accept the opportunity.
Yeah, the only other option is to nominate someone who's not here, Alma. Just kidding.
That's usually how it works. So
he will learn to show up. No, just kidding. Alma, I think you would be a great asset. Honestly, you would bring a lot of value. And you know, if there's ever conflicts with work or you're feeling overwhelmed at times, it's not just you. You absolutely have support around you, and you know, we can make it work and be flexible because we're here for a common goal and we're all here to support each other. So does that sound okay with you if I go ahead and call for a vote?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Alma. All right, so I'm going to do I don't want to mess this up. I'm going to do a roll call vote. Is that correct, Camille, that it's roll call vote right now? She's probably nodding. Camille, are you there? I just want to get confirmation.
Yeah, I think
yes, I'm so sorry. I was multitasking. Would you mind repeating what you said?
I just wanted to see if I can just do a roll call vote for Alma to be voted in as vice chair. Is that the correct thing to do?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that's completely fine. Yes.
Thank you. All right. I am actually going to start with the one who nominated her, Mike Eister. What is your vote?
Vote aye.
Thank you, Mike. Okay. Susan Cox.
Aye.
Thank you, Susan. And Amy Covich.
Aye.
Thanks, Amy. And Franny.
Aye.
Thank you, Franny. Marianne.
Hi.
Thank you. And Counselor Stair.
Aye.
Thank you. Pete.
Aye.
Thank you, Pete. And Philip.
Aye.
Thank you, Philip. I vote aye. And then Alma, let's make it unanimous. What's your vote?
Aye.
Okay, great. All right. That unanimously passes. And thank you for that nomination, Mike. And Alma, thank you for offering to step up. I hope that you get a lot out of this and excited to work with you. Okay, awesome. Thank you, everyone, for that. Really appreciate that. Now we get to go on and hear from LTD staff. Actually, I'm sorry, items for board recommendation.
There are none.
There are none. So now we do hear from staff. So it looks like Tom is up first. Tom, we are ready for you.
Great. I'm going to talk about the committee vacancy. We had a number of applications, and just to remind you, in the bylaws, the general manager selects the members of SPC, and that is confirmed by the board. So we went through a process, and I recommended to Mark that we appoint Martin Gator as he goes by Marty, to the committee. I actually had a nice talk with him and Councilor Evans about his background and talked to him about what we do as SPC. And he's actually joined in the participant section tonight to hear in, but the idea would be to take this to the board for confirmation at the October meeting, and then he would be able to join. And so we'll include him on the doodle poll as well for that December meeting.
Tom, would it be appropriate for you to tell us a little bit about his background, or since he's here, can we pull him over and have him just give a little bit of a bio and why he's interested in being on this committee?
That would be ideal. And if we could bring him over, I can tell you what I know about him, but it'd be good to hear from him. Camille.
Oh, here he comes.
Oh, there he is. Excellent.
Hey, Marty, how are you?
I'm good, thank you.
So this is fun. We kind of put you on the spot.
Yeah.
I do have to brag. Marty's actually from West Eugene and is doing really great things civically. And he is also, we met through professional ties, and he did reach out ahead of time to find out a little bit more LTD. So he did his homework. So Marty, thanks for being here tonight. Can you just introduce yourself a little bit, talk about your interest on this committee?
Absolutely. Thank you for bringing me over and putting me on the spot. I was hoping to sit kind of in the background and be quiet for a change. So thank you. Yeah, actually, I've been in Eugene for about 15 years now. So I'm actually coming up on actually becoming a Eugenian, I believe. I moved here from Utah. Prior to that, Colorado is my hometown. My plan is to actually provide a little bit of forward thought, being involved in the expansion of what we're doing here. And I wanted to kind of be a part. That was my goal, is to what can I give back? I've been involved in the business community. I've worked with Integra and telecom. I worked at Cumulus for a while doing radio advertising sales. Now I do my own thing. My whole goal is accessibility. Digital accessibility is my hot button right now. I work with primarily government agencies, but I also work with the private sector as well, ensuring digital properties are accessible for people with disabilities. But my whole focus with being on the board was just to be able to provide that bridge. My big thing is, I tend to say conflict is not necessarily something to run away from. it's something to run towards. I love to be able to kind of find the rough edges and see where I can help facilitate the change. So my background is in communication and conflict dynamics. So I guess that sort of helps. So if anything, just looking forward to being a part and see where I can help out the best, provide some of my background. I come from large market, so love being in Eugene. I tell people this, I've lived in Eugene longer than any place as an adult. So that kind of tells me something. Time just kind of flew. I woke up one day and I was here for 15 years. I don't know what happened. So time to get involved.
That was great. Thank you, Marty. And you're seeing all of these faces on the screen here. Please feel free to reach out to anyone if you feel like you want to get caught up to speed or just want to know any of the SPC folks a little bit better. Maybe really quick, we could just give a quick background around Robin for Marty. And for example, Franny is with ODOT, and maybe just say your affiliation, or for example, Amy, how you were past chair, something like that. Franny, do you want to just introduce yourself really quick?
Sure. Hi, Marty. I'm Franny Brindle. I'm with ODOT. I'm what you call an area manager. So I'm in charge of project development and delivery on the state highway system in Lane County. I also serve on the MPO and the Lane Act, the Area Commission on Transportation. Welcome.
Thank you.
Marianne.
Hi, my name's Marianne Nolte. I have been on SPC for a few years representing Better Eugene Springfield Transportation. I used to be a staff member there, and now I'm a board member. And currently I work for Lane County Land Management.
Nice to meet you.
Awesome. Pete, go ahead.
Hello, Marty. Nice to meet you. My name is Pete Knox. I've been on the SPC for about a year. I've been involved with Eugene Neighborhood Associations for about 10 years. I was served 2 terms as Neighborhood Leaders Council co-chair, and also concurrently with this, I am on the Active Transportation Committee for the City of Eugene. So, and welcome.
Thank you.
All right, Amy.
Hi, Marty. My name is Amy Cubbage. I work with Cornerstone Community Housing in real estate development and asset management of our affordable housing. And I've been involved in this committee for a few years now and did serve as vice chair and chair at one point as well.
Fabulous.
So, welcome.
Thank you very much.
All right, Councillor Stair.
Hi, Marty. Leonard Stair. I'm a counselor from Ward 4, which is between 21st and 42nd on the south side of Springfield.
Oh.
I am also a representative for Teamsters Local 206, representing some bus drivers, other people in the transportation industry. Glad to meet you.
Pleasure to meet you. Thank you.
Perfect. Alma.
Hi, Marty. My name is Alma Fumiko Jesus. My pronouns are she, her. I work with United Way of Lane County, and my role is the director of individual giving, which means I just get to connect the community with opportunities to engage. Thanks for being here.
Pleasure to meet you.
All right, Mike.
Hi, Marty. I'm Mike Eister. I'm retired from the University of Oregon and active in the community.
Mike, I think we've crossed paths before, Mike, I believe.
I would not be surprised, maybe at a chamber event.
Yeah.
I'm a previous, I've chaired the LTD board and the strategic planning committee, and also I've served as president of BEST and currently serve on the BEST board. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Nice to meet you.
I'll sum it up. Mike's the guy to go to when you have questions. Susan Cox.
Well, Marty, I am like one meeting ahead of you. This is my first meeting on the committee. I am a member of the LTD board just since March, so relatively new. I am vice president of policy for Holt International, and I'm also on the foundation board for LCC. So I look forward to seeing something besides just the little squares, your real face.
Great. Glad to meet you. I think you're probably happy that there's a new guy.
All right, and let's hear from Philip.
Hey, sorry, not as storied as everyone else here. I just work for OD, public service rep, and I'm also someone who's active in the community. But other than that, yeah, it's me in a nutshell.
We're happy you're here. Well, thanks for taking that time to introduce yourselves, everybody. And Marty, Camille will pull you back over to the attendee side, but thanks for letting us put you on the spot and sharing a little bit about yourself.
Fabulous. Thank you.
Thanks, Marty.
You bet. You guys.
Perfect. Thank you so much, everyone. So the next agenda item we have is a moving ahead update. Andrew Martin's going to be presenting that, and we have 30 minutes for this. Hopefully everyone got a chance to review the extensive materials in the packet. And Andrew, we are looking forward to hearing from you.
There we go.
There he is.
Hi, everybody. Is Rob Innerfeld here? He's going to help me present this. Rob Innerfeld from the city of Eugene.
I think Camille's pulling him over right now.
Yeah, Rob's here, so.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Andrew Martin. I am a planner at LTD. And today with me, I have Rob Innerfeld from the city of Eugene. And we kind of co-project manage moving ahead. Let me share my screen with you. We've got a little presentation we've been doing. We wanted to give you an update on this. So kind of the purpose of today's meeting, we just wanted to recap the project. We haven't talked with you in about 2 years. It's been a long time. I think a lot of you may not have been on SPC the last time we talked with you, and we'll blame COVID for that. For slowing us down. We wanted to tell you about the public hearing we had, which is kind of the last big major public milestone, and then kind of talk about our path to decision making. But I'm going to turn it over to Rob. We wanted to kind of start at the beginning because we know a lot of you maybe haven't engaged with the project or haven't engaged as SPC members. So Rob, do you want to take it from here?
Sure. So as Andrew, sure, that's a good suggestion. Hi, so I'm Rob Innerfeld, and I'm Transportation Planning Manager for the City of Eugene, and I work in the city's Public Works Department. Like Marty, I actually moved to this area 15 years ago, so I guess I'm also a Eugenian, and I've worked for a long time with staff at LTD on a bunch of different projects, including West Eugene MX. And as Andrew may have just said, the public hearing for moving ahead was held in October of 2019. So it's been a while since we've been before some of the different bodies. And we gave, I think it was May of this past year, that we gave an update to a joint meeting of the City Council and the LTD board. And so the idea is that we're coming to you a couple times and the cities, and then there's also an oversight committee. I don't know if you're planning to get into all that, Andrew, later. Okay, so Andrew will get into that later, what the process is. So really, right now, I'm just going to start, because there's so many new faces on the Strategic Planning Committee, is giving you an overhead of what Moving Ahead is. So Moving Ahead is a partnership between the City of Eugene and Lane Transit District to redesign and invest in 5 major corridors in Eugene to make them better for walking, biking, and taking the bus. By better, we mean things like safer for people crossing the street, having buffered or protected bike lanes for people biking along the street, and buses not getting stuck in traffic. The project is focused on 5 corridors: Highway 99, River Road, Coburg Road, Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard, and 30th Avenue going through downtown Eugene out to LCC. The goal of Moving Ahead is to develop a set of projects that can be implemented over a 10-year period that will transform these streets, making them safer for people walking, biking, rolling in mobility devices, and riding transit, as well as helping to implement our land use vision, climate action goals, and LTD's frequent transit network. Next slide, please. You may be familiar with LTD's comprehensive operations analysis, which previously was called Transit Tomorrow. And that and Moving Ahead are two different processes. Moving Ahead focuses on capital investments, while the comprehensive operations analysis focuses on the bus service that will be provided on these and other corridors. One major facet of Moving Ahead compared to how we have previously delivered MX projects is the system level approach. Looking at 5 corridors at once allows us to make better decisions about what types of investments will benefit the overall system, which is how riders experience our transportation network and also how LTD operates. We're also using the process to engage the community on a vision at both the street and the network level. Previous corridors took about 10 years from the project initiation to opening day. Moving Ahead was designed to more quickly make the investments our community needs to make these streets safer, more efficient, and more livable. Lastly, from the LTD operations side, these are streets where buses are most likely to get stuck in traffic, and this is happening more and more each year. Corridor investments can ensure that bus travel times stay consistent for years to come, and this has benefits both for bus riders' trip durations and for LTD's operational costs. So now I'm going to hand it over to Andrew to talk in some more detail about the different alternatives that were considered.
Still muted. Okay. So when we talk about Moving Ahead, we're really talking about 3 alternatives in each of those corridors. Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard is the exception of 2. But what we're talking about is, while we talk about the discrete options, really we're talking about a spectrum. And right, no build means no investments as part of Moving Ahead. That's pretty easy. And MX is the version of bus rapid transit that we've developed here in the Eugene Springfield area. And it includes, the green articulated buses with doors on both sides, really high quality bus stations, dedicated bus lanes where there's an opportunity and need to reallocate street spaces. And the kind of new one that we don't have in the community is Enhanced Corridor. And it's kind of a moderate level of investment between no build and MX. And with that, we would have probably more regular buses, but running at high frequency of around 15 minutes, stopping at bus stops that are definitely nicer than just your standard pole in the ground, more amenities, but it's not like a full MX station. And, just I guess to be totally transparent for the purposes of federal grant programs, both of those things could be considered bus rapid transit by the Federal Transit Administration, but MX is a much higher scale of investment, and Enhanced Corridor maybe doesn't qualify as bus rapid transit for the purposes of federal grants. Depends on how much investment we want to make. So the Enhanced Corridor and MX, they're really different in each corridor. And those are really, the tools that we're using are really tailored to address the challenges and opportunities in each of those corridors, and they're scaled to those. So as I mentioned, we're using a common toolbox approach, and some of the tools we're talking about are things like bus and turn lanes, transit queue jumps. We have those in our community today. More enhanced crossings and protected bicycle facilities to protect people who are walking and biking and make them feel more comfortable. And, skip ahead. We're trying some innovative things, things like potentially looking at routing bikes behind bus stations. And let me show you how this plays out in a corridor. And I'll show you River Road, because I think this is a great example of how these different levels of investment can work. So you're looking at kind of the big overview map for the River Road Enhanced Corridor. And each of those green arrows would be places that we think we might need enhanced crossings to help people get across River Road. It's a fairly moderate level of investment. You can see that they're the only place where there are proposed transit lanes would be business access and transit lanes to BAT lanes that we have in our community already around Beltline to really help get the bus through the Beltline intersection. But otherwise, it's mostly safety upgrades, and things like transit signal priority along the corridor. So it's a pretty moderate level of investment for buses. If you contrast that with the MX level of investment, we're proposing bus and turn lanes for much of the River Road corridor, with protected bike lanes on the street. Again, enhanced crossings, because we know people need to get across the street. So it's using the same tools, but it's different in scale. It's much more investment. So from the beginning, moving ahead has really been centered on community engagement. And over the last 5 years, I might even need to update that because we're going on 6 years now. I think over the last 6 years, we have had hundreds of meetings with the community, ranging from large open houses. We canvassed most of the businesses on the corridor, more than 500 businesses. We went and knocked on their doors and tried to talk to them. I have sent out tens of thousands of pieces of mail with my counterparts at the city. We have gone out and met with individual property owners at their property, online open houses, meetings with community groups, you name it. This project has definitely tried to do it. So we've been out there and we held formal public comment periods in 2018, 2 of them in 2019, and that kind of culminated with our big public hearing on October 21st, 2019. And we were getting ready in spring of 2020 to bring all this information back to the community, report back on what we heard. And then, of course, the pandemic hit. And in response to that, we kind of paused the project to allow the community to deal with more urgent needs. But we are now getting this process going again. So, at our public hearing, that, like I said, that was the last time we were really in front of the public. And we had an open house before that. We had developed a series of investment packages to try and make it more simple. Investment packages being just a mode on each of the corridors. That's a really wonky way of saying, like, pick an option for each of those streets we're talking about. And we packaged those together and presented the results if you had done something on all 5. And we had this open house. We got 31 people speaking at the public hearing, but we invited people to submit written comments. We left that written comment period open as long as possible. So we actually took comments until January 7th, 2020, if people sent them in to us. And we got a total of 120 comments about those packages. When possible, we tried to figure out how many individuals that is. So we believe that it's 92 unique people representing 20 different organizations if they chose to affiliate themselves. So I think we got a really good response at our public hearing. And what we heard was really similar to kind of what we've heard all along, which is that people are generally supportive of making investments in our streets. I think that for the most part, we've heard support to do something. What that is a little less clear because we're talking about so many different options. A lot of the comments did not specifically address the investment packages, which is how we were trying to engage with the public. And we really took away from that it was maybe too complicated to engage with packages. A lot of people wanted to engage about a specific corridor that they care about. So for instance, we hear a lot from people who maybe care about Coburg Road or River Road, and they don't speak to the other corridors in the way that they spoke to maybe 1 or 2 of them. A lot of the comments, maybe didn't even address specific proposals or specific packages or, investments that we're describing. A lot of them just talked about really big picture needs for the community, things like the need to make our streets safer for people, whether they're walking, biking, driving, whatever they're doing. Need to address congestion, climate change, those kind of really big picture issues that we wrestle with a lot of our work. And so I'm looking at my notes here, about 40% of comments were supportive. Much, much less than that were people who addressed kind of opposition to the project. So the biggest thing that people had that was maybe a kind of like negative that people saw in the projects were really just about the impacts to the community and the cost. Impacts being things like property acquisition, impacts to businesses, things like that, that we've kind of always really try to work with the community on as we do these projects. So that's kind of the last major milestone, and I included a big report in your packet, and I apologize, you don't, if you want to, you're welcome to read all of the individual comments. The summary part was a much smaller piece of that report. So if you have any questions, we can talk about that, but I do want to outline kind of what happens next, because that's a big piece of what we wanted to talk about tonight. As I mentioned, so we've been at this for a long time. We're kind of at the end of our process. And that means that where we are, we've done all this public outreach, we've done a lot of technical work, we've analyzed a lot of designs, and now we're at the place where we need to make a decision. And SPC is one of our project committees. We actually have two that kind of govern the project. We have our Project Oversight Committee, which is made up of elected and appointed officials, as well as a few staff members who are kind of in executive roles. And then we have SPC, which is you all. And we are hoping to come back at your next meeting in December and ask you to make a recommendation on what the level of investment should be on each of these corridors. And I know for a lot of you, that might seem really overwhelming, because maybe tonight is the first time that you've really spent some time trying to figure this project out. And like I said, we've been doing it for 6 years, and there have been times where I've done it for 50 hours a week for months on end. So there is a lot there, and we want to help you. So Rob and I are willing to kind of do a session for anyone who wants outside of the normal meeting time, where you can ask us questions. We can do a longer, more in-depth presentation on some of those more technical details that you might be interested in. What's the ridership look like if we do this option versus that option? You know, how many driveways can you not make a left turn out of? I mean, we have thousands of pages of technical work that we could get into and answer your questions, but obviously not everyone wants to get that presentation tonight. So we're offering that as a separate session if you feel like you need more information to make a decision. But we did want to make you aware that we are going to ask you to make that decision at your next meeting. And that decision would be, I guess, just to be really clear, a recommendation on what SPC believes our community should invest in on each of these corridors over the next 10 years. That recommendation will go to our board of directors when they begin deliberating along with city council next year, early next year, we anticipate. And then they'll make a decision probably like Q1 of 2022 if we stay kind of on the path. So with that, open to questions, comments, thoughts, whatever you all want to talk about for the remainder of the time.
It might be easier if you stop screen sharing just so we can see the gallery of folks for the questions portion to have a conversation. And then feel free to call on whoever. Andrew and Rob, did you want to go ahead and call on folks? I see Franny and Marianne have their hands up, so Mike as well.
Andrew, why don't you do that?
I am sorry, I lost my audio for a moment. I didn't hear the what was just said after my presentation. Sorry.
Can you hear us now?
I can, yes. Sorry, that's why
I just want us to
screen and trying to troubleshoot.
Just take. I can do it. Just to take questions. So why don't we have a few people with their hands up? Why don't let's see. I see Marianne and Franny. Is there anyone else? And Mike. So why don't we go in that order? Marianne, Franny, and then Mike, and then we can see if anyone else has questions. I think you're muted, Marianne.
Thanks. Thank you to both of you for the recap. I know this has been a long time in the making, so it's good to have the refresher about it. I just have a question. I guess I remember moving ahead was a really involved process last time, and we had a lot of meetings and there were a lot of discussions about this package or that package. And I guess I'm just wondering, kind of with SPC's recommendation, I guess it sort of feels like I'm not sure what we're recommending, because I know that there were packages that we talked about last time, and I don't know if those are being brought back in just the same way, or if there's something different about this time around that we're recommending from here.
That is an excellent question, Marianne, and it highlights that I forgot to mention something that's really important. And that is, so I mentioned people had a hard time with packages, right? Like something like 15 or 16% of people commented on a specific package that we brought out. And the way that we interpreted that was that that was not, it wasn't working. And that's why we didn't show any packages today. We are, right, functionally, if we decide on each of the 5 corridors to do something, right, that looks like a package, right? But we're kind of not using that language anymore because you get that matrix up there and it just gets really hard. And we heard that from a lot of people. So we're trying something a little different. We are going to make a staff recommendation to you all and kind of explain the reasoning for that. And that, I hope, will make it easier. Obviously, you all get to recommend whatever you want to recommend. That's what we're asking you. But I think if we give you a recommendation from staff and why we believe that is, I don't know, the correct or responsible or whatever positive adjective you want to use, investment for our community, that would be a really helpful starting place for you all. And if you wanted to make a different recommendation, we would certainly encourage you to explore that. But we didn't, it's not ready today, but we do have some cool public involvement tools where we're going to be pushing that out to the community. And we're going to do that really soon. So before your next meeting, you'll definitely get an email from us, just kind of like, hey, check this out. It's meant to be really public facing and friendly. There's also a technical version of that with more details that I'll have in your packet for the next meeting. And that would be a good starting place. If there's anything you want us specifically to include that would help you, I would love to know that so I can prepare it for your next meeting.
Great, thank you. That's really helpful. I guess a follow-up question then is the public engagement strategy. It sounds like there will be surveys and maybe focus groups happening. No, not those things.
No, sorry. When I say public engagement, I don't mean that we're asking the public a question. I just mean we are going to be, our goal is really information sharing. And actually on the next item, I'm going to talk about the IAP2 spectrum of public involvement. So maybe this will make more sense later, right? But our goal is information sharing. We have already asked the public about their values a bunch of times. And right now we're in the next step where we need our decision makers and the committees that inform them to make recommendations based on that. And I can share all the public involvement information with you all, what people told us over the years. But we are really just making them aware that a decision is coming. They will certainly have an opportunity to testify before those public meetings as time allows, as you know, normal open meeting practice. But we are not doing any more surveys or focus groups at this time.
Okay, cool. Thank you for that update.
So I think I'm next. I had a couple questions. So a lot of this work was done before the COVID hit. And so then, you know, the COVID did kind of teach us all different things about, you know, how people use the system. And a lot of things have changed with technology, with people commuting from home, I mean, teleworking or doing doctor visits at home. So that may have changed a little bit, the information. It might have put a nuance on some of the information. That's a comment and maybe a question if you've considered that. And then I can't remember I remember that the corridors, you did a lot of with information share, looking at through different lenses and slicing and dicing data and whatnot, but I don't remember if equitable access, specifically for people of color and disabled communities and folks in lower income, if that was looked at with the different alternatives being offered.
I'll address the second point first, and then I'm going to look to Rob actually to help back up my case for the first one. So we did do, there's actually a technical memo with how kind of, there's like a whole environmental justice technical report, which is the kind of, remember that we're doing this public process to figure this out, what the community wants. There's also this thing staff are doing where we're trying to streamline the environmental review process. And so a lot of our work has really been focused towards providing information to the community, but doing it in a way that down the road will save us time and money as we go to actually try to build these projects. And one of those reports, the way you do it is there's an environmental justice technical report. I'm not sure that's how the federal government wants us to look at it. I'm not sure that encapsulates everything that our community expects. And we could certainly have a discussion about that if we want to. But I'll say the short answer is yes, those things are looked at.
I guess I'll just say one other thing about that is, I mean, this isn't really an analytical comment, but these are the backbone routes for LTD in Eugene. There's a lot of low-income people that are on and people of color that are on all these routes, and whether they live along the route or they work along the route or their school is along the route. So I think there's a lot of need along all these corridors to make them work better. And it's just, remember, it's not just for the bus service, but it's also for people walking and biking along and across the street. And so I guess it gets to your first comment. And I think, as we come out of COVID, people are still going to have a need to get around. Are the patterns going to be exactly the same? We have no idea, but there's still going to be that basic need for people to travel around our community. And I can, being on the dealing with just hearing people's concerns about safety on our streets. I mean, we still hear people's concerns about being able to safely get across the street. And I think, one of the sad things we experienced during COVID was, we didn't necessarily experience this in Eugene, but there was a rise in traffic fatalities nationally because with less traffic, there was actually more speeding. So it was sort of an unintended consequence of what happened with COVID, because on the one hand, it was great that people were driving less, right? So I would say for I think, and also I guess the last thing I'd say about this is these are long-term investments. They're not really responding to short-term patterns.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think congestion is back to where it was before COVID started, right? That's costing LTD money, right? So even if ridership doesn't go up a ton, LTD spending money to have buses sit in traffic. And these projects can help eliminate some of that. And two, I think that, ridership is down today, but if you look at our MX system and how ridership worked on that, the ridership decline on MX was dramatically lower compared to a lot of our other fixed route buses. MX actually still carries a ton of people every day. And with students coming back, we're seeing that. And actually kind of the resiliency side of that during the pandemic, when we had to limit the number of people on buses, our MX system was able to carry more people who needed to get around whenever we could only have 20 people on a bus because they come so much more often. So
next is Mike and then Pete.
Yeah, so I may be an example of where longevity is a disadvantage because, like other members of the committee, I've been involved with moving ahead since its inception, and through various stages of the project. I can't tell if I'm conflating different recollections or different meetings, but I have a recollection that Best made a very specific recommendation with regard to moving ahead, and I thought that SPC maybe had done that as well, but I can't say that for sure.
The last time that we were at SPC, I'm gonna guess it was in like August, based on it was before the public hearing in October. We asked you all to recommend to the board that they take out a certain set of packages, and SPC recommended 5 packages go out for the public hearing to get the feedback on that. And the report that was in your packet kind of shares the responses to those, to what we heard about those packages. BEST did make a specific recommendation. They called it Enhanced Corridor Plus, which was essentially the transit level of investment for each corridor would be Enhanced Corridor, but that they wanted to see all of the safety investment made for people walking, biking, and driving, and whatever else on the street.
Thanks for that little trip down memory lane. I appreciate it. And I will take that into consideration as we weigh our next round of recommendations for the board.
Okay, Pete?
Yeah, so I've looked at a lot of this stuff, and I do remember some drawings that were kind of high level that were differences between the enhanced corridor and MX, and I can't seem to find them again. But the question I kind of have is is there a big difference between the enhanced corridor and MX as far as the enhancements for bicycle and pedestrians?
Andrew, do you want to take that? Because I think you have a better technical knowledge of that.
Sorry, my headphones are acting up again. Could you answer that, Rob? And I'm going to try and fix this real quick.
Oh.
You're on mute, Rob.
Rob,
you're muted.
Sorry. So what Pete asked was the difference between the MX and Enhanced for walking and biking facilities. I think they're pretty similar. There are some differences, like I think Highway 99 has protected bike lanes for MX and only regular bike lanes for Enhanced. I imagine that's something we could probably address in design if we wanted to. Yeah, go ahead, Andrew.
I have a kind of easy response to that, right? Okay, so MX projects have more, and without getting into the specifics, because Rob's right that the next phases of this project are really about figuring out those specifics, not the concepts, which is where we're at now. We looked at different levels of investment, and for each of those, Highway 99 is a little different, but each of those has about 30% of the total project cost wrapped up into, I'll call it walking and biking, but it could be some other things, non-transit things. About 30% of those costs are walking and biking costs. So where we have more investment, right, you're going to get more walking and biking. And that has to do with thinking about the projects as eligible for federal money through the Federal Transit Administration. That's kind of how we started the project and viewed it. That is not necessarily true. For instance, the city, we've talked about, could we do those protected bike lanes on Highway 99 or River Road if we did an enhanced corridor? The answer kind of just comes down to who's going to pay for it and how quickly we could get that done. Might be those are different things if that's what we want to see there.
Okay. Yeah. And is there a way I can get a hold of those sort of high level diagrams that you guys had?
I will get in touch with you. I think you're talking about our alternatives analysis, or maybe the executive summary to that. The executive summary is about 25 pages. The alternative analysis is like 350. The reports behind that are a couple thousand. So whatever you want, I'm happy to provide. It's all at movingahead.org. But if you want to, we'll get in touch and get you what you need.
Oh, it's movingahead.org. Okay. I'd forgotten that you guys had a full website for that. So I'll go look it up. Thank you.
And we need to start to move along to our next agenda item, which is hard. This is such a big topic and we haven't talked about it in a long time. And I'm sure there's a lot of questions. But in order to get out on time and make sure we're giving enough time to all of our topics tonight, we need to wrap this up. So is there one last question? And Andrew, is there any follow-up that you can recommend that this committee takes today?
It looked like
Really
Amy had a
happy-
question.
Yeah, I'll take Amy's question, then I got something to wrap up.
I'll try to make it really quick here. And this might be a big question, but just wondering how this connects to the Transit Tomorrow work and kind of long-term service planning. Is the thought that we would make a decision, the community would make a decision on these infrastructure investments. We would go out and try to get the money, see what's feasible, figure out what we could actually build in terms of infrastructure improvements, and then use that to determine what level of service would make the most sense. Or just wondering how this integrates with the Transit Tomorrow and service planning.
I'll make it short. Transit Tomorrow, we never made a decision on that. LTD's board never made a decision on that. I don't get to make decisions. So that was always short term. Moving ahead has always been long term. So what makes sense today with today's infrastructure, with today's housing and all that, doesn't necessarily make sense in the long term. That said, we learned a lot in Transit Tomorrow, and that has certainly informed our staff recommendation for what you'll see from us. We pretty directly reference the fact that we learned some things about our system through that process, which is good, and that impacted our staff recommendation. But again, this is long term. We're talking about building for the future. These are all major corridors. They all pretty much had 15-minute service under Transit Tomorrow. So they made sense in Transit Tomorrow today. That's where a lot of our service is today already. They're going to make sense in 15, 20, 25 years if we go out and build something.
And if I can add something, Amy, that's a really good question, because I know there's some confusion about the different processes. But as Andrew said, we'll call it the comprehensive operations analysis that we do. Transit Tomorrow was the branding for the first one. That's going to continue to be every 3 years. And as Andrew said, these are our primary corridors in Eugene. They're always going to have frequent service. And I think part of the way I would think about connecting them is over time, it's our intent in service to the goals of the city to be able to provide frequent transit for most of the day. And to do that, you really need to make those investments in the corridor that protect that investment in operational dollars from being slowed down in congestion and actually not as convenient as it would otherwise be. So that's how I would think about connecting the two at the time where those investments are made in the infrastructure. That's going to, from an economic standpoint, really make sense to then invest in that frequent transit network that the community envisions.
Thanks, Tom. So I think we're actually robbing time from me on the next item. So I'll make this really short. I can tell that there's a lot of appetite to talk about this, and that makes me really happy as a staff person to hear that you all actually are engaged with this. So Rob and I would love to do some type of like webinar style thing just about moving ahead, 60, 90 minutes, something like that, where you can ask us questions. We do have to make sure that we're not violating like open meetings laws, right? So maybe like 2 of you at a time or 4 of you at a time. I don't know. I got to talk to Camille exactly how that works, right? We're not going to have a meeting about this. It's really just going to be us sharing information. So I'll work with Camille to get a doodle poll to everyone so that we can give you more information if that's what you want. If you've been around like Mike and you've got all this in your head already, then no need to take us up on that. But if you need more information to make this big decision, then we would be happy to take as much time as we need to answer your questions and make sure that you have that information.
And I'd just make sure that we include Marty on that doodle poll, so that he can take part in those as well.
And Andrew, do you want me to reintroduce you? Or do you want to roll into your next agenda item?
Well, I'll say thank you to Rob for joining us tonight. But I'm still Andrew, but now I'm going to talk about the Mobility Management Strategy Public Involvement Plan. So let me share my screen again. So with this item, I've got a couple goals. The first one is just to introduce you all to kind of our IAP2 spectrum of public involvement, which is how our planning team is now thinking about public involvement more. We've been doing some training, and I'll talk about that in a moment. So that'll help you kind of make sense of what comes after, which is how we're applying this to the mobility management strategy and our public outreach efforts for that project. And I wanted to collect feedback from you all on kind of the way that we're approaching it and potentially the activities that we're doing. If you went through the draft plan in the packet, we are not asking for a recommendation, partially due to timing. We've been working with our consultants to pull this together and didn't have time. So staff are still going to put a few edits into this, and then we're going to take it to our board in October. But we would love to incorporate your feedback before we do that. So getting into it, what is IAP2? You're going to hear the planning team and the marketing team at LTD talk about this in the future. It is the International Association for Public Participation. It's kind of the professional organization for people who are charged with going out and working with the public on kind of these government type projects, but sometimes non-government stuff too. And they've really systematized different aspects of the public involvement process so that professionals have a really clear vocabulary, a set of definitions when we talk about this stuff, and also a set of core values and ethics that help guide professionals and really make sure that people are approaching this in a really positive way and respecting the community. So they provide exercises, different techniques. We got a bunch of books on it that, some of them are just books of techniques that we can try out if our goal is to do something. And they put on trainings. As I mentioned, our team has been doing these trainings. I think we did 9.5 days of training on this stuff, and that's just the foundations course. So we've really been trying to up our public involvement game here at LTD, and I hope that comes through. And I'll say for me, the biggest revelation wasn't in kind of the techniques or the goals that they talked about. We did a bunch of days just talking about different techniques. That wasn't very revelatory for me because I've encountered a bunch of that stuff. For me, it was really, LTD has a history of really engaging with our community on a wide variety of issues. And the way that we can now talk about it, if we all get the same vocabulary, I think that'll help us really describe what our goals are and why we're doing certain things. And that can really, I think, be valuable to the community. So you may have seen this graphic before if you have ever engaged in public processes. This is their spectrum of public involvement. And it has 5 different levels of engagement. And really what this is the degree to which, kind of across the x-axis, if you will, that's the degree to which the public has the ability to influence a specific decision. So there's the inform level, consult, involve, collaborate, and empower. And at empower, the public agency is telling the public that the final decision will be made by the public. For instance, at LTD, our board of directors would implement whatever it is that the public wanted us to do. At the inform level, which I mentioned, our current work, not Moving Ahead overall, but our current work with Moving Ahead is really about providing the public with balanced and objective information to help them understand the problem, the solution, the process that we're going through. And one thing I really want to get across is that going up the spectrum towards Empower is not better. It's not better. All levels are equally valid, and it really depends on what the decision is and how much people who are affected by that decision can have on it. So, for instance, I think a really good example is when LTE is faced with snow and ice events, some of our bus routes in the hilly parts of town, we have to modify them for safety. And LTE informs our riders about that through service alerts, social media, and other channels. We don't ask our riders about that because it's a safety issue. We do understand that it can be burdensome on them, that they may have challenges getting to work or school or to other appointments that they may have, but we have to operate in a safe manner. So there's not really an ability for the public to impact whether or not we're going to drive a bus up Fox Hollow after we get 6 inches of snow. We just can't do it. Most of the time, at least most of the time when Tom or Kim or myself are talking with you all about planning projects, we're somewhere in the middle of this spectrum, right? A lot of the time we're going to talk about consult, involve, and collaborate. And that's where I think most projects are that engage with the public. The correct level of involvement really depends on what the decision is, what the public's expectation about being involved is, and how much the decision maker, which is usually our board, feels that level of input should be. And it's really ultimately up to the board to say whether or not they are willing to turn that decision-making power over to the community, which is why we've kind of framed our public involvement plan around the spectrum so we can be really transparent about what our promise to the public is, how their input is going to be used, and what their level of influence will be. And so kind of just to sum it all up, the spectrum itself and how much power is kind of the decision-making power is given over to the public, it doesn't have anything to do with the quantity of the meetings that we do. So that's kind of a different scale. The quality of the materials, again, is not that. It's really just about how much the community actually gets to influence the final decision that we're making. So switching gears a little bit, let's talk about the mobility management strategy, and then I'll talk about kind of how these things merge. So thanks for bearing with me on that. So mobility management, it's really something that we've been talking about here at LTD. We were here in November. I was here in November talking with you all last year about this project, and we have got some consultants on board and we're going. Mobility management, I like this definition. It's a community vision where the entire transportation network really works together with customers, planners, stakeholders to deliver options that meet the community's needs. The way that works for LTD practically, right, is we're looking at what new tools are out there, what new partnerships are available, how can we serve our customers in ways that we haven't served them in the past with a traditional fixed route bus. The traditional fixed route bus is always going to be an amazing tool for us to use, but maybe there are other tools that we should have in our toolbox, and we want to know how can we be successful at using those. So I think the question facing us is not whether we should do a certain mode or partnership. This strategy is really, I think, taking a look at what roles we can be successful in playing. And our primary product would be a framework that helps us to assess opportunities and implement those modes. We're going to create a guide for running pilots. And once we develop that framework, we actually want to use it. We want to test it out. And we also want to get a list of possible ideas that we can start to look into after we go and consult with the community. To be clear, the mobility management strategy isn't going to change anyone's service. There won't be any direct service change out of this. And the list we come up with is not going to address every single need in the community. So just with those kind of caveats, what we're planning to do for public involvement, we have a kind of two-phase approach. And the first phase encompasses the background research and the development of our framework. That work is really technical, right? There's not a lot of room, I don't think, for the public to influence the outcome because it will deal with issues like the cost for LTD to provide service, kind of like how different modes work, what kind of staffing LTD would need to operate something or be in partnership with someone. and kind of those resource questions. There's not a question to the public in those things. It's really figuring out the technical details. And since we're not asking, should we put, for instance, mobility on demand in a certain place, I think we're really asking something more like, is mobility on demand good at solving some kind of transportation issue? Under what conditions could LTD be involved in something like that? And what would LTD do that would produce the best outcome for the organization and the community, right? That's a lot more abstract of a question. So the second phase of the project, I think, is where the public does have an opportunity to influence this decision. And that's why we want to work at the consult level. And what that would mean is that we want to, for lack of a better word, crowdsource ideas from the public about where there are gaps in the transportation network for them, what would make it easier for them to get around. We're not asking, do you want scooters in your neighborhood? Do you want LTD to buy those scooters and operate them? That's not the kind of question we're asking. We're really trying to figure out those high level, where are there gaps, and start to think about how we could fill those gaps. And we will take ideas from that public involvement and kind of run it through our framework. Our goal with that is to obtain feedback on solutions, analysis, and decisions, and give our management and board an accurate understanding of the community's concerns and priorities. And with the first phase, our goal would be to provide the public with information to assist them in understanding the problem, alternative opportunities, and process. So some of the things we're going to do, right, to achieve those goals, we have a bunch of techniques, which we've outlined in your packet in the draft public involvement plan. Even though we're at the informed level for the first phase, which is kind of the maybe the biggest phase for staff work, that doesn't mean we're not doing a lot of work to inform the public about what it is this strategy is and is not, and the outcomes, what they will be. So we're planning to do things like an interested parties list, a website, some community presentations. And then when we go to the second phase, we have other pieces like virtual open house, focus groups, stakeholder interviews. And throughout the project, we'll be working with a technical advisory group, which is staff from different agencies, from our partners at the city, potentially with ODOT, and maybe groups that might partner with us on some of these projects in the private sector to get their technical expertise and really find out kind of their lens on how these partnerships might work. And I will note that we are planning to, at this point, do everything online, but we recognize that online doesn't work for everyone. So we may do some limited in-person type events that target historically marginalized communities, maybe seniors or other people who have difficulty accessing our online materials, but the bulk of this will be conducted in a virtual space because we're still, as you're aware, not doing in-person public meetings at LTD. So I'll also note, I don't want to slide on it, our timeline is kind of early next year for public involvement. We're working hard on this framework and trying to figure out what that looks like, and plan to do a lot of these community-oriented gathering information activities early in 2022. So with that, really just wanted to talk with you. First off, ask if the whole IAP2 spectrum thing made sense and provided any clarity for you all. Obviously, I got 9 days of training and you got like 5 minutes of me talking at you. So I don't expect you to be experts, but I am curious if it helped to understand kind of the goal of what we were doing when we started talking about it. And then if it did make sense, then I'd love to get your feedback on kind of, is the level and our goal with each of those phases of public involvement correct? Am I wildly off base? Do you want to see something else? And if you had suggestions for specific activities, we can talk about that. That might be a little harder to tweak. If you want to talk about something that's really expensive for us to do, I might have to say we don't have the budget, but we would love to get your feedback on our draft plan. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. Are there questions? And Andrew, go ahead and call in, folks.
I am going to stop sharing so I can see you all, but I'm happy to bring the questions up. I see Mike first.
So I have strong recollections of the West Eugene MX project and the arrogant bureaucrat sign posted all over West 11th as we were trying to work through that project. And what I learned from that is that there's a real difficult thing for a public agency. That is, we go out and we get a lot of public input and advice, and by the time we are able to implement that advice or implement the project, it's a whole new group of people that have forgotten the advice they gave, or they weren't involved in giving the advice. So it feels to the people who are there in the present time of implementation like something is being jammed down their throat. And I don't know how a public agency gets around that problem, because it does take time for us between the advice stage and the implementation stage. So I'm not sure what IAP squared advice they can provide us. I do think that there's a real downside to the informing part, because the more we inform, the less it seems like we're listening. So that's kind of my observation.
If I can provide a really brief response, I appreciate the feedback on inform. I think one of the goals with that phase, right, is to help people just understand what it is we're doing. And for instance, like why I'm not asking them for feedback, right? Like it's really important for people to know that this framework is really informed by things like LTE's cost structure, what's available to us, kind of what's even statutorily legal for us to do, right? All of these things impact kind of the shape of that framework. And later, right, it's really important to understand that we're not proposing to change your service based off of this. If we do that, we're going to have other processes, right? Maybe if something makes sense in a theoretical world, we talk about it as part of the next COA, and we have a big public conversation about it. So the inform level is really, a huge part of it is just how people understand that and understand why we're not asking them for more input now, if that makes sense.
It does help to have everybody start from the same base of knowledge. That's for sure, Andrew.
I see Mary Ann.
Yeah, I guess I just wanted to kind of go along with what Mike said. I think the inform stage makes total sense when people just need an answer. And your example, Andrew, about the service change on a snowy day was a great one, that sometimes we just need to explain to people the direction we're moving. I guess what I want to queue up is that sometimes it feels to me as a community member that I'm not getting super clear information about what LTD is doing and why. That sometimes the message has been a little bit wishy-washy, and I'm thinking about Transit Tomorrow in particular, which I realize has gone through changes, but there was never a clear direction of, we heard these things, this is how we're moving, it's gonna be great because of these reasons, and we stand by that. So I guess I just wanted to bring that up as we're doing the inform stage, to really make it clear, here's what we're doing and why we're stoked about it. And I think that would go a long way to helping people get involved and feel like there's something going on, rather than like, I'm hearing mixed messages and now I'm worried. It's like, I'm hearing a clear direction and I get it.
Thanks for that. I appreciate it. We can do a good job or we can do a bad job at each of these levels. You know, we could be at the empower stage and do a really bad job of running a process, you know, we still empower the community. So I think that's a different dimension, and I appreciate the feedback on being really clear. And I hope that we do a good job with that. If you're, you know, with that informed stage, if that's, you know, again, it's an open conversation. I hope I'm not coming across as defensive. I'm looking for your input. When we designed this, you know, like I said, I don't see a ton of room for the public to influence those technical details. But you know, if I'm missing something, we're here for your feedback. That's what we hope to use you for right now, anyway. Anybody else? Alma?
I was just going to say, looking through the document, I see areas of like you're developing this interested party list and there are e-updates at certain points, and then using social media. So again, not knowing the past of what we did and looking for those like feedback loops, sort of, it seems like there's an opportunity for that. So again, not knowing what we've done in the past and knowing that there's some potential concern around that, this looks like a nice way for us to kind of continue that, kind of sharing what's going on and keeping folks informed. Again, this is me being one of the newer members on the committee, but just looking at, it seems like this process is trying to work that into this to make sure that we're communicating back at different points during the process. So I just want to say, I looked through the document and that seems like something that, because I to Marianne's point, that was a concern that I have too, is will people know how we're doing this and why? So it seems like that's built into this. So, but looking into it a little bit more would be helpful as well.
Thank you. Anybody else? Comments, questions?
Okay. Andrew, thanks so much for taking the time to be here tonight. We really appreciate that, and answering all the questions. And I'm glad that you are getting engagement and excitement around these topics. And so we just really appreciate everything that you're bringing to the table.
Thank you. Have a great night, everybody.
And good job making up for time. So thanks for doing that as well. I know people always appreciate that when we hit our end point. So let's go ahead and move on to our final agenda topic for tonight. It looks like Kim is going to lead us through the strategic business plan implementation update. Welcome, Kim, and this will be our final topic for the evening.
Great, thanks, Caitlin. Thank you, everyone, for having me here. I am the supporting cast to Andrew tonight. I will try to keep it short and sweet for you all. Most of you are familiar with the strategic business plan. It was through your deep involvement and ultimately recommendation to the board of directors that they adopted the fiscal year 2022 to 2024 strategic business plan, LTD's first ever, back in July. So I'm just here to give you a status update and let you know that we've gone through the development process and now the real work begins for staff, right? And a reminder, as was clarified, it's a 3-year plan, but because of the schedule delay, it's a 2-year and 3 quarters. The implementation part officially starts this Friday, October 1st, which is in our fiscal year is Q2 of 2022. It's a little bit confusing. But with that, my name is Kim Le, and I have been tapped as the coordinator for the implementation. So this is the second phase, right? Bringing the plan into reality now. And so the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna bring up the 1-pager to give you a quick recap of what the strategic business plan is. And then the second phase, I'll tell you about what staff has been doing in the background, gearing up for the rollout of the plan. Okay, can you all see that? The strategic business plan focuses on LTD's most important outcomes to deliver, and it bridges our mission, vision, and our values to our day-to-day operations. As you recall, we updated our mission statement, which is now connecting our community. Our vision statement is in all that we do, we are committed to creating a more connected, sustainable, and equitable community. And the values are the behaviors and the principles in which staff behaves towards one another as well as to our community and our riders. So the strategic business plan has 5 areas of focus, 5 priorities that will really help us provide clear direction on what we need to achieve in the next 3 years. Those are customer satisfaction, employee engagement, community value, financial health, and sustainability. Each of those areas of focus have associated metrics or success outcomes with them. So for instance, customer satisfaction, by the end of fiscal year 2024, we want to get to a net promoter score of 55. Concurrently, for employee engagement, we want an employee engagement score of 65% and so forth. And then in combination with those bigger goals are the actual work plan tactics. What are the projects and initiatives that we have worked with you all with very, very collaborative process with staff and our executive team to come up with these approximately 30 main buckets of tactics, projects or initiatives that we will undertake for the next 3 years. And so I'm not going to go through all of them. You can also visit ltd.org/strategic business plan for more information about this, and also download the full plan. In combination with the work plan tactics are the performance metrics. This is first time where we are really prioritizing what we are going to start measuring, right? This is the key performance indicators by which, if we are successful in this, by doing these tactics, then we would achieve these goals, which all brings us back to why we exist, which is to connect our community. So that is the very broad one pager that I've shared with you. And now the rest of my presentation really is just to tell you about what myself and Amy Reichert, who is the implementation coordinator advisor to this process, has been doing. One of the first things we did is, of course, determining the structure. How is staff going to work internally? Who is managing the project? Who do we report under? And so it is directly under Mark, our interim general manager. And then I've developed a project work plan, which is the roadmap to get the plan into reality form. In addition to that, I've also developed a communications plan. The communications plan is, as Andrew has talked earlier, is really about informing, right? We've adopted this plan through this robust process with you all. And now it's time to roll out and tell people what the strategic business plan is. The tactics within those might have other different types of public participation components, but the communications plan is for myself to get out there to staff, to put the information out there to the community about the existence of the plan and how LTD is pivoting, aligning our day-to-day operations to this new strategic business plan. And so an example is the one pager that I just showed you as part of the communications plan. We've had to identify the tactics and the scorecard owners, right? And then within those owners are the teams assigned to them. So who's actually going to be doing the work of, for instance, enhancing customer service, or who's going to be doing the work of the fleet procurement plan, and so forth. And then we have also in the next few months, as the plan officially kicks off in October, I hope that you are all signed up to our Bus Talk, our monthly newsletter. So we'll have an article coming out about the rollout. If you are on social media, we'll have posts on Twitter and Facebook about the rollout as well. We'll be changing up our template. So the PowerPoint presentations will look differently with the new mission, vision statements aligned. The websites will be updated. In addition to that, we're working with the clerk of the board to refresh some of the board materials and SBC materials that we, as part of our revamp. So for instance, today, as you see in your agenda item summary, the AIS, there's a section about how this strategic business plan aligns to what the agenda item is. So that's one example. We're also putting more information into the board orientation packet because we know that we have 2 new board members coming on. And other things where we're working with the clerk to realign board engagement to the strategic business plan goals. One of the things that I'm really excited about is we are finally going to develop a dashboard. It's something that LTD had been wanting to do for a while, but we finally have the capacity and the right staff to establish a, hopefully as real time as can be, a dynamic dashboard so that you can all go onto the website and see how we're making progress on a monthly and quarterly basis. And those KPIs, those performance metrics that I mentioned, would be updated on a regular basis so that you can see, as well as staff, how much progress we're making towards our goals. And then we, as you recall, Transpro, the consulting company, really led the development process for us that led us to this point. And we're retaining them for a few very discrete small tasks to make sure that what we are doing now is making progress the way that it's intended to be, the plan is intended to be. And so there's continuity in terms of the subject matter expertise. And then we anticipate bringing the quarterly progress updates to the board, as well as to this body, obviously every quarter. So the next one will be in, the first one will be in February 2022. And then moving forward, we hope that, you know, depending on your level of interest, I can come back to give you verbal presentations or include it as part of the SPC written report or something like that, just to make sure that we keep you up to date on the great work that staff has been doing to get us to really, you know, have a clear work plan, North Star, in which we can focus our agency's work for the next 3 years. And so with that, I am happy to take questions.
And Kim, if you see someone, just go ahead and call on them.
Yeah, tonight I'm not asking for any formal recommendations or anything. I just want to let you know that there's a lot of work in the background to get us here, and we'll go to the board in October to give them an update as well. So I see Mike, is that your hand?
I'd just like to say that I really appreciate the metrics and the dynamic dashboard idea. I think those are really strong accountability measures.
Can you turn my light on?
I agree, and I'm excited about that. Pete? You're muted.
Yeah, blah, blah, blah. So I really wanted to kind of piggyback on what Mike just said. I'm really appreciating that the dashboard thing. It's something I've just heard tonight, and I love the idea that there's going to be public transparency about what's going on, and I think that's goes a long ways to building public trust. So I can't wait to see how that unfolds.
Likewise, me too. Franny?
Yeah, I appreciate this presentation and I love the metrics. I think that they're the right ones. I'm curious about at the end of the 3 years in 2024, I would imagine there'll be, you know, a recap of how the program worked, the takeaways, et cetera, and then next steps. Would you think that it's possible that that LTD would just continue this or meet again and reconvene and decide on new goals? Have you thought about, I mean, I'm wondering at the end of 3 years, what happens?
Mm-hmm. So before I talk about the 3 years, I neglected to mention that actually our intention is every year to refresh, not a complete overhaul of the plan, but to reflect back on our progress and actually make sure that this is something that is, we're progressing on a realistic basis, because this is our first time ever. We've adopted and now implementing a strategic plan. I know ODOT, actually, I spoke with Mary McGowan about your strategic action plan. I've also talked to Lane County and other entities about how they roll out, right? And so this is new territory for us, and please give us some slack. I think there's going to be some hiccups the first year or two as we're getting the cadence of this. But the idea is, if we are successful, and this is something that the district wants to take on permanently, that every 3 years or so, although I've heard from Mary McGowan that 3 years is maybe too short, that it's probably more like a 5-year process. But whatever that frequency, right, that every so often we want to reflect and update. Obviously, we want to update the tactics because we would be completing those, putting new tactics on. But it could also be as big as updating our overall 5 strategic areas of focus, right? So it might not, the next time around, it might not be customer satisfaction that's at the top. Something else might be at the top and shift things around. So I might be jumping ahead, but that would be the plan, right? If we continue on this path. Are there any other questions? Yes, Mike.
So I'm sorry to jump back in there again, but I just like to say this is a really big deal. This is the first ever strategic business plan that LTD has had, and commendations to the staff and the board for putting this together. It's a really big deal.
I echo that, Mike.
Yeah, we certainly think so. Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, I think if it's successful, it's going to go a long way with credibility for the agency, with the public and with the partners. And I think it'll be a good example for the state, for transit, other transit organizations. I think it's a really big deal.
Thank you. And speaking as a staff member for myself as well as and other staff, right, is that we understand what's coming down our plate, what's the staff work. And so it gives us also a level of the assurance.
Well, Kim, I want to say thank you for your time tonight. We really appreciate you being here and sharing with us the update. And you know, we're really appreciative of this work. It's blazing new trails, right? You guys are pioneering new paths, and we really appreciate the boldness that it takes to do that. And thank you for all the hard work that you are doing. And please pass our appreciation on to your teammates as well.
Yep. Thank you. And thank you all for your contributions to get us here.
Okay. Thank you to Andrew and Kim who have helped us make up some time. Fortunately, we actually are at the end of our agenda for the evening. If you look at the very end of your agenda, you'll see the future meeting agendas. And then I just wanted to remind everyone that Camille will be sending out that doodle poll for you to pick our December meeting date. If you can do that in a timely manner, everyone would appreciate that. And then just for the good of the order, anything else before we go ahead and adjourn this evening? Mike, go ahead.
So the Strategic Planning Committee is an outgrowth of what was called the MX Steering Committee. And I'm not sure who all on here was a part of those groups when at the time, but we were very deliberate in developing the bylaws for the MX or for the Strategic Planning Committee. And I'm wondering if we could ask Camille to send out to all of the Strategic Planning Committee members a copy of the bylaws. It'll be a reminder for those of us who worked on this a long time ago, and maybe good information for the new members of the committee.
Camille, did you catch that?
And Mike, we actually
Yes,
mentioned that
sorry, I was double muted. Yes, I can send the bylaws out to the committee, absolutely.
we briefed Councilor Stair tonight on SPC, and we recounted that same history and that the bylaws we developed or the board approved are important to get a sense of the full representation that we're looking for from the committee. So yeah, we'll get those out to you.
Thanks, Mike. Anyone else? Well, if anyone in this group knows me, I like to be good stewards of your time, and I like to be efficient with my meetings. So I'm happy to announce we're ending 20 minutes early. And with that, have a great evening. This SPC committee meeting is officially adjourned. Good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye. Thanks.